This is the number one topic in real estate right now. Why interest rates went up and now why interest rates are going to be coming down.
If rates go down, you can afford to borrow more money. That's pretty straightforward.
Making money more valuable, meaning your dollar will go further. Short-term gain for maybe some short-term pain.
Why do you think the market's not going to crash?
There's no way to predict exactly what's going to happen with interest rates. Trying to forecast that is not really a investment strategy.
Don't wait for them to go back to 3%, but we're going to go celebrate once they're around the 5s and 4s.
You're going to save on your monthly payment, but that entire time of paying rent while you wait for the rates to go from 7 to 5%, it's going to be a wash. All right, welcome to Millennia Up.
Welcome to Millennia Up, everybody. Oh, look. Scene change.
Yeah, we were messing around with different sets here. So if you're watching this on YouTube, that's what you are seeing. This time we are going to talk a little bit about interest rates.
I can freely talk with my hands without having to worry about the microphone
that's
in
right.
my true fashion.
I know. We get the full gen experience here at this point. We are going to be talking a little bit about interest rates here. We're
going to be talking entirely about interest rates here.
But not forever, Jen. We're not going to be talking forever about it. But I think we can break this down pretty easily for you. This is the number one topic in real estate right now, and ever since they've gone up, that has been the case. I'm going to actually talk in the beginning here about the economic perspective. There's a lot of people out there who don't really understand what inflation is or how interest rates work or who decides what interest rates are going to do. And I'm not going to bore to tears.
Correction. I think that the definition of inflation is just a misconception or just a blanketed statement of inflation is just that everybody raises the cost of things and that's it.
Yeah. So I want to give a little bit of a primer because a lot of the people listening to this podcast probably are not economists, obviously. I want to give context to the idea of why interest rates went up and now why interest rates are going to be coming down. And then we're going to get a little bit into what we think is going to happen with 24 and 25, and that'll be crystal ball time.
It's a very salesman thing to say with, oh yeah, rates are going to go down. But it's that's really wishful thinking. But you know me, I said this to you the other day. You can make a decision or say something that is completely valid, but unless I know why, I'm going to fight you on it and push back all the live long day until I actually understand why.
You're in luck because I'm going to explain why. If you look at the forward-looking data, that we'll have a prediction for where we think rates are going to go. Yes. And again, among buyers and sellers, this is the number one topic: is what is going on with interest rates. Because unless you have been not engaged in the housing market for the last few years, you wouldn't know this, but the interest rates went up the fastest in U.S. history, and now they are slated to be coming down in 2024. So we'll get into all that. Do you want me to start with just some economic tidbits and just explain some broad strokes here, and then you can get into what it means for
what it means in layman's terms?
In layman's terms. So I'll be the technical, and then she becomes the practical. So guys, just as a general term, inflation, it gets thrown around a ton in media circles, economic circles, and even realtors and lenders. They talk about it cavalierly because frankly, we have to understand what it is in order to explain it to our clients. But inflation is essentially just the amount of money in the system. Imagine if you had $1,000 in the entire world, how valuable those dollars would be if those were required in order to buy goods and services. Imagine then you have $100 trillion. The value of that money would go way, way down because it would just be everywhere. So the idea is that inflation is essentially the amount of money in the system and the amount of money it takes to buy just regular goods and services. So a loaf of bread is $3 and then it becomes $5. And it's just because the dollar is less valuable. So during COVID, what we did is essentially print a ton of money. And I think economists are going to look back and at that time from 2020 to 2023 or 2022, they're going to look back at it with the same scrutiny as like 2008. And even the Great Depression. There's a lot of Monday morning quarterbacking. Should have we printed all this money? We put a lot of stimulus out there. We saved a lot of companies. We just gave out a lot of money. But in order to do that, the government had to print a lot. So basically what happened between 2020 and 2022 is the money supply expanded enormously. And so what that does is it devalues the dollar. And so that's why your dollar does not go as far at the gas tank or in the grocery store or when you're going to do regular things, consume goods and services. So what the Fed, which is the Federal Reserve, has done over the last year and a half, has attempted to pull more money out of the system, making money more valuable, meaning your dollar will go further. And they do that by raising interest rates. Now, I'm not going to get into the technicalities of what like interest rates do to like inflation exactly, but just know that they want to slow down the flow of money in the economy by raising interest rates. If it's more expensive to borrow money, whether you're borrowing for a house, you're doing something with a small business, you're buying a car, they want to make it, believe it or not, in kind of like a screwed up way, they want to make it prohibitive for you to be able to do that. Because if they don't, then you get what's called runaway inflation, and then the whole system comes apart. So it's always just like a balancing act. The Fed has been very communicative in what they've been doing, and they've been trying to cut the amount of money in the market and trying to slow down the economy because it was like a freight train through COVID, which nobody really expected to happen, but it happened nonetheless. And
you mean you didn't expect to have a global pandemic in your lifetime?
No, but like everyone thought when the pandemic hit, like everything was going to close. There were people talking about 100% turnover of small businesses, meaning every small business would fail at some point. But the only way that didn't happen is because the government came in and just produced an enormous amount of money and kept everything afloat until everyone could get back to business. This had a huge implication for housing too. Housing costs went up. The price of everything went up. Contractors were charging through the nose because of lumber. Supply chains were disrupted. Like all these things came together to create a perfect storm of a pretty high inflationary market. And again, the Fed just raises rates to keep that under control. Last month, they came out and said they are pretty much done raising rates. And the entire real estate market had a complete and utter bonanza festivus celebration. Interest rates have gone from basically about 2.75%, they went all the way up to about 8 in a span of about 18 months. I would say that
which has
we're
been
done.
Also difficult to be able to predict the market.
Yeah.
Because when we used to be able to look back at any like market reports for certain areas, by the time the data is actually gathered and the reports are like put out, it's not even applicable anymore because now it's like, well, rates just changed again, which affects the buyer's pool. And then just, creates more of that rate lock effect for sellers. And then that creates inventory issues. It's been difficult to even be able to predict what is trending in any market.
The Fed's been pretty communicative, though. They've been pretty open about, hey, we're going to keep raising rates, so don't expect us to just pull. But how the rates being raised and then how the mortgage markets and how they price loans, meaning like the interest rate you'd actually pay at the settlement table. So that's another thing that I wanted to make sure people were aware of, is that if the Fed can raise rates and mortgage rates can actually go down, they are not like inextricably linked, but they do follow the same trend. So the Fed has been saying, hey, listen, we're going to raise rates. Like, just get used to it. Buckle up. And the thing that happened in December was they said, we're done. We feel that the adjusted rate of inflation has now fallen to a point where we can just now keep interest rates where they are to keep that suppressive effect, but we don't have to keep raising them and being overreactive to them. Some economists would argue that they were too aggressive with rates and that they probably could have raised it to 6.5 and let it ride. But I think the Fed was not taking any chances. Everything became more expensive. So
what you're saying is they printed so much money. So there's so much money out in front of us. Oh my God, look at all this money. That's a cactus. Ouch. So there's all this money. So they say, oh, look, there's all this money that like people have and the economy has. So they're going to just raise the prices just because there's this much money?
Yes, because they want to actually take money out of the system.
So what I'm hearing is more money, more problems.
More money, much more problems. If you really want to do a deep dive on inflation, go to pretty much any country in Southern Africa or lots of countries in South America, because what they've done is decided that the government would just issue as much money as that was needed. And that's when you get into hyperinflation. So Venezuela, Zimbabwe, I think it's like $1 in Zimbabwe equals like $5 trillion. It's like ridiculous. It's like there's no value to any of the money. So then the entire economy collapsed.
They print more money to be able to help during the pandemic, to be able to help people. Okay. So because they printed that much more money, so really it's a risk reward of short-term gain and short-term relief for long-term kind of like, lack of a better word, like punishment.
And that's the balance. So it's like short-term gain for maybe some short-term pain. And it's if you get
pain sort of
long-term gain for short-term pain, obviously that's a good one, but
which is where we're at right now, at least in like the real estate market, is a short-term pain for a long-term gain.
Yeah.
And we'll get into that in one of the next few episodes.
Yeah, well, listen, let's talk about
this
what would
episode.
happen. Let's talk about what would happen in real estate. Imagine if prices just kept going up, and it was really cheap to borrow money. Let's say the Fed never raised the rates. What do you think a house that was worth $500,000 in 2021 would be worth now? It would just everything would keep going up. If you just take real estate as a sampling of how rates affect the economy, it's pretty easy to see. You raise the cost to borrow money. That makes it prohibitive for people to actually do that transaction. Mm-hmm. And that's really what they're trying to do, is that they say cool the economy, but they're trying to kill off the economy a little bit. It is a balance. There's a lot of levers. They watch a lot of data.
But then I am actually then going to ask the question that everybody is thinking or may have thought is, so then why do you think the market's not going to crash?
In terms of housing, the thing that has propped up the economy despite these rates is the fact that it's just supply and demand. There's just not enough inventory out there, and there's a lot of people who want to buy houses. Mm-hmm. The market was more expensive in 2023. It's going to get cheaper in 2024. But it wasn't like, listen, the rates go to 15%, 16%. That crashes a house economy. Like, that's what happened in the 80s.
Would give boomers one less thing to be able to say that they did that we didn't.
I know. So
but I'm not trying to get there. They can have that one. Keep it.
They do have that. Hey, listen, they have that one. Gen X has the Great Recession. This is what the millennials, the generation, and the Gen Z generation have to deal with. That is completely normal. I think I said that on like our first, maybe it was like on our introduction episode. I said every generation has had a thing.
We just get the ripple effect from all of them.
Yeah, but
we get the emotional damage of every single one.
Yeah, but I bet you there are boomers sitting around saying, silent generation screwed up after World War II. It's shitting on the younger generation,
which is what we said in prior episode that we're going to try not to do.
It's all for sport.
All right, layman's terms, very basic. If rates go down, you can afford to borrow more money. That's pretty straightforward. Our lovely editor is going to put up this lovely graphic I put together. If you're listening to this, it's going to be a lot to follow along with, but do your best. I was going through to be able to give at least like a real life situation of how much of an impact interest rates make. I want to break this down for you. So we are talking about test property in Real Place, Pennsylvania. So for those who don't know, in the MLS, there is a way to look up a buyer's net sheet. So these numbers are real numbers that are estimated that factor in everything that goes into your payments, like homeowners insurance. So I got it as exact as I could. That would be practical in real life. At Test Property Road, they purchased it for $425,000 in November of 2023. Now, we're going to guess that it was about a 7% interest rate, and that would make the payment $3,480. They got in at $425,000. Now, for those people who say, I don't want to buy a house until rates go down. No problem, because as you're going to see here, the payments do go down. Stay with me here. Somebody waits until rates go down to about 6%. Now they want to start getting in. So that same exact house that was purchased for $425,000 has now appreciated to $450,000, because what history shows is that houses always appreciate even when rates go down. So houses are always going to increase in value as time goes on.
In fact, as rates go down, they should appreciate more.
Yeah, and it's just going to be
because it's cheaper to borrow money and the payments go down, so people are willing to spend more.
Yes. Now, that same house, because you waited until rates went down to 6%, you are saving some money. You're saving about $100 because now the payment is $3,375 versus $3,480. You're going to wait even longer. You say, nope, I'm not going to get out until the rates are at 5%, which, by the way, if you want our expert opinion, I think is an excellent rate to be able to have. I think that's a good goal to set for yourself.
What rate?
5.
5?
I think that's fine to at least, okay, if we're comparing to 7-8%.
Okay.
4 is ideal, in my opinion, like real opinion.
0 is ideal.
Then go rent.
Yeah, go rent. No, it's 100% when you rent.
Sure. Okay. So anyway, getting me off to topic.
Right. I don't want Jem blowing a gasket over here.
That's right. I don't think 5 is a bad interest rate.
No, it's not. It's fine.
Okay. I will retract what I said about the best. It is not a bad interest rate to have. Happy? Okay. So now, this person, let's call him Jim. I need a real person. So Jim goes out and he's like, rates are at 5% because Jen said that's a really good place to go look at houses for. So now, because the house appreciated for the exact same house, you are spending $475,000 for that house, even up to $500,000 for that house, because now you're in a very competitive bidding war. So now you're going to have to outbid and work harder and pay more for that house, because now that interest rates are at 5%, so many other people are out there.
Yep.
So you're paying up to $3,400 which is only $80 less than when it was at 7% interest rate at $425,000.
Oh, by the way, you've waited probably 2 years or a year and a half, and you've hemorrhaged all that cash into someone else's mortgage by renting. This is super granular, but it's super important. There's a lot of different ways to unpack these numbers, because as these rates go down, guys, there's going to be more people piling into the market. You and I have probably, onboarded 10 new buyers in the last month or so, with people just, hey, I saw the rates are going down and we want to get the process started. And that was not the case this time last year. Everyone was worried that the rates were going to keep going up. And we had a whole episode about Barbara Corcoran, and she was right. She's been in the business forever. And she said, people need to get in, because as the rates go down, it's going to become a much more attractive thing.
So to finish my point, in my example with Jim over here, that even if somebody were to wait until rates go down to 4% at $500,000, which is now what you're going to end up buying for that same exact house, 4% interest rate, your payment's going to be $3,100. But the person who bought it at $425,000 at a 7% interest rate is now going to be able to kick back, put their feet up with a nice glass of wine in their hand and be like, oh, look at all of them fighting each other to be able to get a house, and just call up their lender and say, I'd like to refinance, please. And now their mortgage payment is going to go down to $2,721, when the person who is waiting for rates to go down to 4% is going to be spending $3,100.
Listen, if it was like, okay, the rates are going to be 4 on X date,
right?
You could maybe put together a model that would work to make it a sound real estate strategy, because you actually are working on information that you like that's known. But we have no idea when we'll get to 5 or 4. And if you're just waiting for like a number because of a calculation you've done in like a Zillow dashboard.
Oh my God, please don't do that.
Please don't do that. That's not a thing.
They're trying to get you to contact
They're trying to
them.
get you to clicks, and then you get into Zillow loans, and then you get one of their lenders, and then we won't talk about Zillow. But anyway, at the end of the day, guys, there's no way to predict exactly what's going to happen with interest rates. So trying to forecast that is not really a investment strategy. The other thing that a lot of lenders have gotten very creative with very affordable refinances. So usually with a refi, you have to actually get new title insurance. There's all kinds of fees. But most of the lenders that we work with now are finding ways to just recast the entire loan once rates go down.
So actually, this is something that we brought up in a prior episode that we glossed over, because we were going to touch on it later, and I think this is later. You're getting advice from people who are going to tell you, oh, just refinance, like it's nothing, like it doesn't cost money. It does, but the way that things used to be, yes, you have to then just pay through another whole process again to be able to refinance the house. But because times have changed, we are facing new and different issues. The people who are involved in these, so the banks, the lenders, they are trying to be able to keep up with the issues and be able to have programs available to combat those. So with these high rates and knowing that they are going to go down over the next 3-5 years, what he was talking about is our lender, for example, has a program where you can refinance in the next 5 years and they will not charge you those refi fees. That doesn't mean if there's title has certain fees, there's that.
Yeah,
but
they
it's
might
still
still have to do an appraisal or certain things, but it's much more affordable because they're expecting rates to go down.
They have programs to be able to make it so that you can do that with less pain.
Yeah.
And with less out of pocket.
So what's the prediction? What's the Jen crystal ball got over there for rates in 2024, 2025?
Well, Fed announced they're going to drop them 3 times this year. Okay, cool. They're 7.5% right now. We'll drop it to 7.2%.
They are not 7.5% right now. They're 6.75. So
I was just throwing a number.
Oh, you were throwing a number out there. Okay, yeah, they're about 6.825 right now for a good loan. They actually dipped really low. They went to almost 6.125 in December. They call it the kind of the cat bounce. That's what they call it in the economic world. So it always comes back up. Everyone takes a breather. I think by July, 4th of July, we'll be in the 5s.
That's so nice.
I think if the Fed actually cuts rates, the lending world is going to just take the ball and run it with it. If the Fed cuts rates, a signal that inflation is totally under control. I also know that it's an election year, and in an election year, everyone likes to make things more affordable, seem better, and that happens on both sides of the aisle. So I fully
That's
expect...
one thing I will take with election years. I can deal with having my phone blow up about 85,000 times a day with people trying to tell me who to vote for, so long as I can have everything else be a little more affordable.
Yeah. No, listen, the credit crisis with Lehman and Bear Stearns happened November 15th, 2008. It was a week after Obama was elected.
They said.
Yeah. They're like, all right. They're like, hold.
Fire!
That's right. So, no, I do. I think we'll be in the 5s somewhere. I think we're going to be in the 6s for good. I don't think we'll go back up into the 7s either, if you want a bold prediction.
Do you think they'll ever go back to the 3s?
I don't, and if they do, we've got a serious problem because they've got to lower them to such a point where they may have to make it so enticing for people to invest. 3% was very much a byproduct of of COVID. Everyone was so scared about people closing their businesses and everything like that. They lowered those interest rates so low just to make sure that people kept investing, and the home buyers got that message and really went crazy.
Yeah.
Which is what we saw in 2020, 2021, and 22.
So for a healthy market, don't wait for them to go back to 3%, but we're going to go celebrate once they're around the 5s and 4s. So
yeah, and listen, I think even at 6 right now, if there's a downward trajectory, you can always refinance. And again, we have no crystal ball, but since when we first started this podcast, we had no guidance from the Fed to say that these rates were going to go down, and now we do. And not only, hey, we're thinking about it, they've already projected 2 to 3 cuts. And I think those are going to happen in the March and June meeting. So,
and not for nothing, even if you're buying at 6%, you're saving $100 from when it was at 7%. And it's still a noticeable amount of money that you'll be saving to still be able to wait and refinance later.
Yeah. And if you're listening to this, you should go to YouTube and look at
please.
this graph, because it's hard to actually state this on the podcast. But these numbers, we can unpack them multiple ways, but this is a pretty easy way for people to understand. It's, you go from 7 to 5%, you wait. Yeah, you're going to save on your monthly payment. But that entire time of paying rent while you wait for the rates to go from 7 to 5%, it's going to be a wash. It's going to take years for you to make up that cash. So I hope when you see it, you'll understand what we say or what we're talking about.
We'll put the link to the episode in the show notes if you're listening on Apple or Spotify too.
And what we can do is we can turn this graph into a link, and then in the show notes, we'll put this link here. So
we'll make it available because it's very helpful.
We'll have our lovely editor, Whitney, take care of that for us.
Thanks, Whit. Okay, so hope that helped at least a little bit, give you an idea of how interest rates work, how they're going to apply to you.
I think they've gotten their fill of us on this one.
Okay.
See ya.
See you next time. Bye.